Hi, my name's Linton. I'm a 45-year-old man living in Adelaide, South Australia. And if you couldn't tell by that little scooch backwards just then, I am a wheelchair user. I have a disability, a type of spinal cord injury, and I decided to start a YouTube channel to talk about it. My disability is something that came on later in life when I was in my 30s, and it slowly worsened over the next 10 years or so. And I didn't really have anyone to talk to about that. I had a psychologist who was amazing. However, you know, he's able-bodied, doesn't have much lived experience of disability, and it helped a lot. But yeah, I think it would have been great to speak to people who have been through that, whose bodies have changed, and they've had to make adaptations and mourn the loss of things that no longer work, and hobbies they can't do anymore, and all that sort of stuff. So that's why I decided to make a channel. I was born with a congenital deformity in my spine, my lumbar spine, and the doctors in the 80s decided it would be best to fuse all of my lumbar spine, or almost all of it, and they put in some like metal rods to make sure that it would grow straight as I matured. After that operation, I was pretty able-bodied. I just didn't have a very flexible back, and the doctors told me that I could do, you know, anything I wanted to, sports-wise and all that sort of stuff. So I played a little bit of footy, not much. Didn't like it, wasn't good at it. But I did a lot of skating, martial arts, and some stuff like that. This is me and my mate Wayne. We wanted to film a fight scene, and we came up with a deep and engaging storyline to go along with that. You can look it up on YouTube if you like, but don't do that. Don't. When I was in my 30s, I was moving house, lifted up some boxes, didn't really feel anything or notice anything untowards, and but woke up the next day and lost a lot of strength in my left leg. Basically what had happened is I'd lifted some boxes, and the one disc that I sort of had at the base of my lumbar spine that was still present had collapsed and compressed some nerves. Yeah, no pain or anything like that, but yeah, as I said, I woke up the next morning and couldn't really move my leg anymore. So ended up getting in to see doctors very quickly, had an emergency spinal fusion done at that last level to take the pressure off of those nerves, but some damage was done. And at that age, nerve damage, you know, the older you get with nerve damage, the less likely you are to recover from it. I had a pretty reasonable recovery though. Over the next 6 months, I was working from home, and my parents came and lived with me for a while and helped me recover. I was doing rehab, hydrotherapy, all that sort of stuff. And I got back a lot of function, but I did end up with something called foot drop or drop foot, where basically your foot, you can't bring it all the way up when you're walking, and it becomes a bit of a falls risk, something you might trip over and whatnot. So at that point in time was when I really started identifying as someone with a disability, and I had to start using mobility aids to make my way through the world. And one of the other things or another symptom that I had was a bit of sort of like generalized left leg weakness as well. And that gave me something called Trendelenburg gait. Had never heard of that until I had it. But basically it's to do with strength in your glutes and not being able to support you when you stride, when you're walking. That was really where my experience as someone with a disability began. There was a lot of work to do in terms of, mourning what I had lost in terms of like my health and what I was now able to do and not do and all those sorts of things. But this is sort of where my experience began with using mobility aids and things like that. So I'll talk about the first types of mobility aids that I started to use, but I'll circle back to I guess the rest of my story with my disability and how I ended up using a wheelchair and things like that. Unfortunately, it's not sort of the end of the story here, but this is where it starts in terms of me identifying as someone with a disability and using mobility aids. sticks. So after my disability started to manifest, I needed some aids to sort of make my way through the world a bit more comfortably, with a bit more safety and whatnot. And the first thing that I started out was this sort of dealio here. It's just your standard grade sort of, hospital issue walking stick, like really cheap, really easy to find, pretty comfortable. And I started using that for a while after my disability first came on, just to help me get around with my foot drop and the Trendelenburg gait and things like that. It was fine, did the job. I think at that time I was in my 30s and I was feeling probably a little bit self-conscious as I started to make the transition to someone who was living their life with a disability. And for that reason, I decided to upgrade at some point, and I ended up with something a little more aesthetically pleasing, if you care about such things. I obviously do. And I got this one instead from a medieval fair here in Adelaide. It's made out of deer antler. It's got a bit of timber on there and stuff like that. This is an olive branch. Yeah, it's pretty nice. It was good. Used to get around with that almost every day. But one thing about this one is because the handle's so hard, because of what it's made out of, it would make your hand go numb a bit after, extended use, putting pressure on it and whatnot. I guess there's nerves in there, and it would make my hand go a little bit numb. This one's got the padded grip, so that wasn't really a problem with this one. This one was pretty good as well because you can just chuck it around, take it to the beach, take it anywhere. It doesn't matter if it gets scratched or banged up or whatever. So yeah, that was good to have around. Eventually though, I needed a bit more support. The weakness in my legs got worse. The foot drop got a bit worse, started affecting me bilaterally, so in both legs. So I needed to upgrade to a forearm crutch, which you've probably seen around. The first one that I used, I don't have anymore. It was just a standard issue, sort of grey forearm crutch that you've probably seen out in the wild before. Your hand goes sort of through it into this cuff and you grab it with a handle that goes horizontal like that. And it gives you a lot more control, a lot more stability. I found that my fatigue when walking was a lot better with that, but mainly probably the stability piece, just because with a walking stick, you're putting your pressure on this thing and there's no other sort of support. All the support is coming from your wrist, but with the forearm crutch, you've got that cuff there and an extra sort of anchor point, I guess, and it definitely makes a big difference. So I started using one of those to get around with. That became my daily sort of mobility aid that I would use instead. And eventually I started using two, and the ones that I got were a little bit like the walking stick with the deer antler. The handles were pretty firm plastic, and so over time I would find my hands would get a bit numb. So that was a bit problematic with those. Not that I was ever spending too much time on my feet by that stage. When I was at home, I would typically just use one in my right arm because my left leg is mostly the one that's affected by my disability, or was at that point. So I would use the one forearm crutch with one hand, and with my other hand, when I made my way around the house, I would wall walk, which means just putting your hands on walls and furniture and stuff like that to get around. And that did me pretty well. That worked out okay. When I was out in the world, if I was going out to a restaurant or something like that, I would use both just for that extra stability, and especially with both, the fatigue was a lot better. There was a lot of processing to be done, during those years in terms of becoming someone that was comfortable with mobility aids, mourning things that I couldn't do anymore, being self-conscious about my disability and things like that. I mentioned before, seeing a psychologist, and that helped a lot. But there was a lot of processing to be done. And with me and my disability as well, something that I found really difficult was that I would get through a phase of acceptance with my disability, and it would become my new baseline, and I'd feel comfortable with it and made my peace with it, all that sort of stuff, and would look at the world in a way that fit my now, the shape of my disability, I should say, and I made sense of it and all that sort of stuff. But then, you know, a few months later or something like that, I might wake up in the morning and find that a toe on one of my feet doesn't work anymore, or some extra weakness or something, and my disability would sort of get a little bit worse. Yeah, that was hard. It meant that I had to adjust and then sort of catch up again, and all the while sort of making changes in my mind and practically about how to get through the world and how to do things, how long I could stay on my feet, fatigue and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was a really tricky period. After using the standard grey crutches for a while, I found that, you know, they were a bit uncomfortable, and I wanted to get something that I was hoping would be a bit more comfortable than that. So I purchased these. I got a pair of what they're called side sticks. A company in Canada makes them. They're really cool. So like aluminium here, carbon fiber here to save a bit of weight, a cuff here with like a little pad in there. Hopefully you can see that. That makes it nice and comfortable. And the tip is really cool as well. It's got this groove here, so it sort of pivots around a bit when you're putting pressure on them when you're walking around. But yeah, the company is called Side Sticks. These were about $1,000 Australian, I think. I've got funding from the National Disability Insurance Scheme, so they helped me out with that, which was much appreciated. But yeah, these are really cool, and I would recommend them. Basically, my use case with these at the moment is I use one every single time I get in and out of the car, because I store my wheelchair in the boot of my car, and then I use one of the forearm crutches to get around to the driver's seat, and then, you know, reverse the process when I'm getting the wheelchair out the car again. If I'm coming home and I know I'm not going to be home for very long, sometimes I will just grab these out of the car and use those instead of getting the wheelchair out, just because, you know, getting the wheelchair in and out of the car, I might do it sort of 8-10 times a day. So if I can save a bit of energy and wear and tear on my shoulders, I'll do that. But yeah, these are really cool and I would recommend them. You can also get a sand shoe attachment that goes on the bottom instead of the rubber tip. Also, I think it doubles as a snowshoe as well, just has a wider footprint and is a bit more stable for softer surfaces. I haven't used that too much, pretty much just one use at the beach so far. But basically I used the sand shoe, used the crutches to get out into the water, and then someone brought the sticks in for me and I was able to have a bit of a splash around. So I haven't made heaps of use of them yet, especially in soft, dry sand. I'm not sure how they'd go in that. And for me, that's like a real pain point because walking in it's hard, wheelchairs don't work in it. So that's a bit of a challenge and something that, you know, I want to try and overcome in the future, or I don't know, that's a tricky one. I might just have to make my peace with that one. We'll see. Yeah. Very cool. Well, thanks for watching. Next one is going to be about foot stuff. Not that sort of foot stuff. It's going to be about accessible footwear, leg braces and stuff like that. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Soon after that, we will get into my car, which has some hand controls, which has been a big win for me and something that I'm very fond of and has allowed me to keep a lot of independence. So we'll do an episode on that. And then after that, we'll dive into some wheelchair stuff. I'm a pretty avid hobbyist photographer as well, so I think I'll go out for a spin in my wheelchair and incorporate some photography in these videos as well. But very keen to hear from you guys as well. If you've got any feedback, please leave a comment. I'm keen to hear what you liked hearing about, what you'd like to hear about, and all that sort of stuff for future videos. But thanks so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.